It's so underappreciated that bass players became 8-string guitar players in gent happened.
Welcome back to another episode of Last Words here on The Pit. We're going to be talking about the most underappreciated member of bands. That's right, we'll talk about the ones that slap the bass. And we have a wonderful, legend. I don't even know. Impresario, bass legend, vocal legend, the incredible Doug Pinnick of King's X. Thank you for coming to our show.
You're welcome.
How you doing, Doug?
I got no complaints. Slap me if I complain. I'm doing great.
I like your background a lot.
Thank you. That's the back wall to my studio.
So, Doug, we're talking bass players. You know, there's so much. It seems like bass players are like the redheaded stepchild of the rock game.
That's true.
And, how do you feel? Do you feel underappreciated as a bass player? Do you feel like there's not a lot of people like you out there that are kind of stand out on the instrument?
Yeah, I do. To be blunt, it's so underappreciated that bass players became 8-string guitar players in gent happened. Okay. I always talk about age, but I've been playing bass since 73. And so I've seen a lot of different bass players in different genres even happen. Even I was alive when they put the upright bass down and picked up a regular Fender P bass, and the war that everybody had of playing it, that you weren't cool if you played a electric bass, So, bass in my life was always the dominant thing in music, always, until we got like into the 80s and 90s. Then all of a sudden, bass players just sort of blended in with the band, and the guitar players took the reign. And the guitar players played the bass riffs, and they had so much low end in the guitar and so much distortion, there was no room for the bass. And remember the time we'd go see like Anthrax or a band like that, Testament, and the bass player would have 2 SVTs next to the bass rig, and there'd be 8 stacks of Marshalls on each side with the guitar players through them. They never even got any respect. And I used to say to them, guys, why don't you get a wall of these things? They go, oh no, it would screw the metal thing up, So I have a lot of attitude towards bass in many ways. I've been really, very lucky in one aspect because I'm a singer bass player. Singers always get all the attention usually. So I get more attention as a singer, I think, than a bass player. My favorite musicians are singer bass players because I just feel like you're a part of the band. Singers, as far as I'm concerned, if you're not playing in the band, you're not really a part of the band because you're not playing. You're not hearing what everybody's doing. You're standing there listening to a wall of noise behind you when you're not singing. And then you got to stand and wait for everybody to do their thing. But when you're playing and singing, you're connected, because when you don't sing, you're still connected with the band. And there's this thing happening. To even go further with this, I was on tour with Pearl Jam, where King's X was, back in 94. And the bass player for the Black Crowes showed up. And me and Jeff Ament, from the bass player for Pearl Jam, 2 humongous bands at the time, and little old King's X, who nobody really knew about, we went out on the town just to have some drinks and to hang out. And everybody came up to me. They recognized me. And I'm thinking, and nobody recognized them. And I thought, it's true. People don't pay attention to bass players. They really don't. And the bands that I've been in, that I've played only bass in, I don't even exist. It was like, it was a real shock to me. And I had to deal with it. My little ego went, oh, no, they really don't care.
Shots fired against the singers.
Bam, 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 bam.
Set the air horn off right now.
But I tell you what, many, many, many singers can play, so they're connected.
No, absolutely. I think, Doug, you bring up a good point that it's genre too, right?
Yeah.
Like, it depends on the genre. If we're talking about rock and roll, because we're a rock and roll podcast, I definitely feel like, all right, so I can't think back to the 70s because I was just a sperm dream at that point.
Oh my God.
But just growing up and thinking about it, like, in the 90s, right? When I heard Let's Play Pool, for instance, right? Just interpreting the bass in a completely different way. I happen to like me some bass because it really is a great accompaniment to the drums. It really helps like from a vocal perspective. I know you shade on them, but it definitely like it has like this quality that's very specific in the type of music I like. So when I heard Les Claypool, I just felt like you ripped it. And like, I don't know, you got your Rex Browns, but one thing you did bring up too.
Rex is one of my best friends.
Well, yeah, and he just has such a distinctive way of playing, right?
Yes.
One thing you brought up was the combo. When I started to do a little bit more like refresher, I'm like, well, who are like the best bass players in metal and rock of all time, right? I realized there's a lot of metal bass player frontman combos.
Yeah.
Mariah, you know, you got Lemmy. I'm wearing my Lemmy shirt in a tribute. Why is the question, Doc? As the guitar player, answer the question.
Well, no, I wish there was more of that, because I always feel like something about when a bass player sings, and obviously this, you also have to go back to Paul McCartney, Rick James, Sting, big one.
Yeah.
I almost feel like the low end somehow like keeps you in pitch better as a singer. Like you can kind of hone in with the track a little more, and you're playing a little more simplistically. So I kind of like, I always said, if I was to sing in a band, I was like, I almost want to play bass and sing. So I feel like I would like hone into the vocal a little more, and you just feel it in your gut a little better. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I think so. It has a lot to do with that. I've been obsessed with bass all my life. So, and I always could sing just because it runs in my family. So it's the two things came natural. Or my obsession for bass was, I had to learn how to play bass, don't get me wrong, but singing was always something I did. So I never gave it much thought, but the bass is the emotion. That's where you move your butt and you feel it's in your chakra, I mean, talk about it. Let's talk about it.
I was going to say, what are your thoughts maybe on the stand-up bass versus versus the electric? Obviously, like completely different sound and capabilities. Like,
I first was introduced to upright bass because nobody played a regular bass when I was a child. So the first song I remember was Why Do Fools Fall in Love by Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. It was 1956. And I can hum you the bass line to this day. I loved it. And anytime we saw a big band on TV or anything like that, they all had uprights. I don't remember really the transition. Just one day I remember people were just playing the other way, with another bass. But I always remembered there was a difference in the sound. And I find myself in some songs in King's X, I'll try to get a upright bass sound with my regular bass tone. I love that. Just boom, 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 boom. That tone is just so cool.
I learned how to play upright bass as my first instrument ever. I was like fat, and I'm like, maybe I'm big enough to drag this huge bass. It didn't last very long. I became a singer.
Yeah.
So I got to ask you the number one question that everybody probably gets at you.
The number one?
Maybe not number one, maybe number three in the mix.
Oh.
Who to you is the most underrated bassist in the rock and metal world?
I'd like to say you.
Pinnick, yeah.
I hate that. I don't want to be that ego guy, but me. I really do. Just it's not that I think I'm great. I know that I've contributed a lot to the bass world because I read it in Bass Player magazine. The thing about the underrated to me is that I don't think I'm underrated. If you're a bass player, we all know who each other is, and we all respect each other. And I've got to be in the magazines and all that kind of stuff. So, I can't complain. But I just know that I'm in the B section of bass players. And I understand that, if there's like if there's a choice between me and another bass player in a magazine or something that has to do that is promotion, well, the other one will always get it because they always have sold more. They have more appeal. My band and me, we're like a fine wine. I love the way I play bass, and I think it's really unique, but it's not for everybody. And a lot of bass players don't want to even sound like that. So for me, I just molded what I do as who I am all my life, and I don't pay attention to all the other stuff. But sometimes it frustrates me when it says 100 top all-time bass players in a magazine, and I'm not in there. I go, oh, it doesn't make me mad. It's a confirmation. It says, yeah, you aren't all that. So stop crying and do what you do and enjoy your life, you know?
Let me give you your flowers right now.
Can I give you one of my I think underrated, or maybe people don't talk about him a lot, is another Doug Wimbish from Living Color.
Yeah.
I got to see him live a couple of years ago back in Brooklyn during a snowstorm, and he was amazing. But then he had this a bass solo where he was like using these loopers and kind of like soloing to his own riffs. It was just...
He's probably got about 300 pedals on the floor. No, seriously. And I got to front them for 10 shows. Corey couldn't sing. And so we did a 10 show festival, festivals in Europe. And I had to learn all the songs. This was about 20 years ago. Wow, God, 20 years ago now. Because all I did was stand there. You know, I wasn't playing bass. I wasn't a part of the band. but that's a joke, I know. I was, but I got to sit and listen to him and see what he did while they're doing their thing, stand there. And it was like, wow, he's pretty amazing.
Some of my favorite bass players in rock and metal, it's almost just as much about their tone, right? And Peter Steele had a signature sound that he had that sound. And so there's other people like Justin Chancellor from Tool, I think is probably like, that guy probably inspires thousands of young kids to pick up bass, because bass is so prominent within their band and sound is so definitive. And another guy is Chris Walstenholm from Muse. That guy does great tones. And that's something about me that really draws me to certain bands and certain players, is just the actual tonality and like the work they put into having something that stands out and not just being kind of like woofy background, kind of subliminal.
You're right. I mean, Chris Squire did that to all of us pretty much. Him and John Entwistle back in the 70s, they took a guitar head and a bass amp and put them together and turned them wide open. And that's why we all rattle and shake the walls. And I've been chasing that sound my whole bass career. Even got a pedal.
Well, listen, Doug, thank you so much for...
You're welcome, Doc.
Being on the show. We appreciate it. Do you have anything coming out you want to promote, you want to tell the people about?
Yeah, I got a lot of things. I have a blues band called Grinder Blues. Our second album will be out soon. I don't have a date yet. We sound like it's basically kind of ZZ Top, early ZZ Top tuned down to B. So it's just really Texas down-tuned blues. And I have a solo record that will be out in about 2 months. And King's X record is almost done, and we'll have that out in 2022. Me and Ray from Korn and George Lynch, we are discussing a new KXM record. So I got lots of music getting ready to come out, and we're all excited about it soon.
Thank you so much, Doug. I love you, brother.
I love you too, man.
Well, that's been our show on Last Words. You can follow us everywhere at We Are The Pit on all platforms. You can find me at Doc Coyle on Twitter and Instagram. And Zena, where do we do the stalking?
Keep it super simple. At Zena Cota with 2 E's. Stalk me now.
Well, if you enjoyed what you saw here on YouTube, please go over to the podcast. You can hear the entire unedited show. You can hear the dirty words. You can hear us talking about the sexiest bass players out there. It gets crazy. So come over everywhere where you get podcasts. Check it out.